And just like that, we're into another brand new live stream here on the Longbox Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I am the Punk, and I am joined on this live stream by my pal, David Whalen. David, dude, thanks so much for hanging out with me on a Monday evening and talking shop with me. I appreciate it.
Can't think of a better thing to do with my Monday evening, Chris. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into all of the things that you do. You are a one-man show with the art, the writing, the lettering, all the things. We're going to get there. And I'm excited to talk because you're just the more that I looked you up on social medias and the more that I looked into the website and what you were putting out, the more I was just like, how does this guy do all of this stuff?
Time machines.
See, I was going to ask if you had figured out cloning, but time machines is definitely a more fun.
The DNA degrades too fast, Chris. I can't. The body's don't last long enough. So.
That makes total sense. No, that's great. So we'll get into all of those things, but first, what's a good conversation about comic books without an origin story? Like, how did you get into comics? How did all this start for you?
Yeah, I was one of those kids that kind of popped out of the womb with a pencil in my hand, constantly drawing, constantly getting in trouble for drawing. I would draw over my math homework, and the teachers would call my parents, and I'd say, "You keep yelling at me. I'm not going to stop drawing. I don't care what you say." Then they found out that if they bought me a sketchbook and let me draw while I was doing other things, I focused much better, and I actually was able to get most of my math homework done, most of my other homework done. Because it was something that I just wouldn't stop doing. Yeah. As I got older, comic books were the thing that got me into reading more long form novels and got me into mythology and mystery books and choose your own adventure and Hardy Boys and all that stuff. And through all of that was reading those books and reading comic books and copying the pages, for the artwork from each page. And I can remember one time, and I think it was in middle school, we did a book report, and I asked my teacher if I could draw the book report instead of write the book report. And to my amazement, she said yes. Awesome. So it just has always been there. It's always been there. I would say that in my 20s. I was growing as a human being to be able to get to where I am right now, and being able to know that this was exactly what I wanted to do. I did work as a graphic designer for about a decade before I became an art teacher, and I've taught for about 20 years now. And through all of it was reading and writing and drawing comic books. So it's been a lifelong journey. And one that I'm super, super proud of and super happy about, and would wish on anybody else to be able to have this journey of reading and writing and creating comic books.
That's awesome, man. That's so like succinctly well said. It's like somebody's asked you that before, because you just had all of that like right off the bat.
There's two things that couldn't get me to stop doing: drawing and talking. So. I'm pretty good at both of them.
I'm just double the talking. Like that was always and standing. I have to stand up all the time. And like I used to get in trouble because it'd be the middle of class and I would just stand up, and I was still doing my homework, like bent over my desk.
Yeah.
But I would get in trouble because I was standing, and my mom was like, "You just gotta let it happen. Like he just has a little ADHD. You just gotta let it happen. It's fine." And then once they were like, "All right, give him the desk in the back, so when he stands up, he's not a distraction." Yeah. Suddenly I was fine. So there's something to be said about
let him do it.
Yeah, like you got to understand and set out we'll give you space to do the thing you need to do in a healthy manner. Yeah. And the sketchbook was obviously the thing that worked for you. So
I was lucky. I had parents that were pretty supportive, concerned at times,
sure,
but also very, very supportive. I was taking new figure drawing classes by the time I was 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So my parents most parents were like, well, you're not going to go. You're not doing that. That's wrong or whatever. But my parents completely understood that I wasn't going in there just to look at naked people. I was going in there to be able to learn and understand anatomy. For a 12, 13, 14-year-old, I was really lucky. that they were able to see past the social normities or whatever word you want to use, to be able to give me that opportunity to be able to do it. And from there, I tried to take nude figure drawing classes all the way up into my 20s. There's not much for that in the area up here. I live in upstate New York. But even up here, I would drive about an hour away from time to time in the last 10 years to take some classes here and there just to keep myself sharp.
Yeah. And that's such a smart thing. And even going back to before we went live, you're talking about the knives, like you have to continually sharpen those knives. If you want that tool to work for you, you have to keep it in tip-top shape. So it goes with any skill as well.
Yeah.
Like that's the perfect example of like, just keep doing the thing so that you can continue to not even like, even if you get to a point where like, I like my skill level, I'm happy with it, but you just need to upkeep it. It's not like you hit that and then you stay that. You like it's always going to degrade a bit. So
the second you think you've got it is when you become complacent. So don't ever become complacent would be.
And it doesn't seem like you're one of those people. It feels like you're very driven.
I'm a lifelong learner. I know that I have a lot to learn. I'm constantly trying to learn. But it was so funny. My wife and I were talking. My wife is an avid reader. I try to read maybe a book a year, 2 books a year, if I can get to it, but I'm always creating. So it's kind of hard to find that time. But she loves and I should do it too, because it makes perfect sense, the audiobooks. So she'll pop on audio, different thing, mysteries and thrillers and, fun stuff here and there. And she'll go through a book a week. She is like an avid reader. So I went on the other day and we were just flipping through the television because we were sitting there talking, and PBS had something on. I don't remember exactly what it was, but PBS had something. I was like, oh, this is fun. And I clicked on it, and she walked in. She's like, why would you turn on PBS? Who turns on PBS? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, nobody does that. It was Antiques Roadshow. That's what it was.
Okay.
And I love the history of the Antique Roadshow.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, I thought this was really interesting. I could learn something from it. If there's one little morsel of thing that I could get out of it, then I'm going to try to do it. And I told her, I'm like, you're a lifelong learner too. You're constantly reading. Why wouldn't you do that unless you wanted to grow your brain, make sure your brain is always alert and doing all those things, just different ways to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I too, it takes me forever to read like a prose novel, even though I own a ton of them. Like I was just raised in a house of like, you got to have books, you got to read, like that's what we do. And so I always had the books. It was never a problem of like buying more or, buying books about superheroes, because comics were my like gateway into reading. 100%. And then I never let go of those. But then I started picking up like, well, okay, so I'll do like the illustrated classics, because those have a picture on every page. And then I'm still reading like Moby Dick and Robinson Crusoe and Tale of Two Cities, like all of the major stories that you should be reading. But because they had art on every page, I was like, cool, I can handle that. And so then I got into like regular novel, but it takes me forever to read a novel because the ADHD is just like, nope, too long. I get maybe a chapter a night, and I've been reading the same book now for like 7 months because I can only read like a chapter a night, maybe. But I love it. But I love audiobooks because I drive a bunch. Like my family is on the other side of town. So anytime I go to see them or take care of my mom or see my daughter or whatever, like it's an hour drive one way for me. So especially when I was commuting to work, like at this point I work from home, but when I had to be in the office, that's an hour one direction in traffic. So I was cranking through 1 or 2 audiobooks a week until I got into the longer, like, 18-hour, 20-hour books. Then suddenly it was like, all right, this will take me like 2 weeks. That's fine. But yeah, I love audiobooks. Yeah,
it's definitely a good way to be able to focus. And I mean, the thing for me too is how many times can you listen to the same 18 songs on the radio? We've heard them. We could all sing them to ourselves. We don't really need to hear, if you're deep diving into, a band that you've never heard before, go for it. And I love all that music, big fan of music. But every once in a while popping on, an audiobook or popping in a podcast or something like that to be able to listen to, I think is super good for like brain health, to be able to keep your mind sharp and going.
Yeah, because it does activate like different parts of your brain listening to music versus listening to a podcast or an audiobook.
Mhm.
And like it's the critical thinking versus the creative
Yeah,
enjoyment of the sound of music.
yeah.
Um, and
Right and left brain working together.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to fire those synapses, right? So when you do listen to music, because you brought it up, so we're gonna go there now.
Yeah.
Like, what's your music of choice?
So I was born in 1975, and my parents were big advocates of music. They had music playing a lot, so I would listen to a lot of the old doo-wop, Chandral's, Beach Boys, pick Herman's Hermits, those guys, and always loved those growing up. And then into the 70s would do rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, normal stuff. As I got older, I think that my 80s hair bands was a big thing,
Okay.
of course. And then 90s grunge hit. And I love all those bands and all that stuff. My three favorite grunge bands, I would say, are Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, and gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of the other. I'm saying it's my favorite, but I can't remember it. I can't remember the third one, but I'm thinking of the song right now and I'm blanking on it. But the grunge is really the one I'll go to. Like if I'm listening to Sirius, I'll pop on Lithium for a while. The 80s I'll have on there. I love Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack.
Okay.
Love that kind of stuff. But I will say, for saying all that, I will say that recently I've gotten a little bit more into yacht rock.
Okay.
So it'll be like Looking Glass.
Yep.
It'll be Daryl Hall and John Oates. It'll be a bunch of other music like that, that would be considered in that yacht rock genre.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I'm too old to bang my head anymore, quite frankly.
Speaking of being too old, I went to a concert of a couple like new metal, which is now I think dad rock is what they're calling, like the new metal stuff that came out that was blending genres and industrial and rapping and all of the things all at once. And I went to a new metal concert with a buddy of mine, and we both, like, he's a year younger than I am, both creeping closer to 40, but we called each other the next day, and I was like, dude, I don't want to make this phone call, but I just need to be honest with you. My neck is, and he was like, oh my God, dude, my back is, and I was like, okay, cool. Cool. Because we went and we got buck wild and had a blast.
Awesome.
And like, it was definitely worth it. It's easily in the top 5 concerts for me. And it had nothing to do with the bands because we just had a great time hanging out. But yeah, like we both were like, oh God, I'm glad you started that. Cause I did not want to be the first to be like, man, I don't think I can do that anymore. I can't hang.
It gets a little rough as you get older. What was the first, not to take over, but what was the first concert you ever went to?
I love this question. My first concert ever was the Village People.
Wow.
Right?
That's
Like,
cool.
that's why I love this. So I don't even know if it counts because they played after a Reds baseball game. And so like, I'm pretty, like, I've always been in
the Cincinnati area.
Yeah.
I grew up in Dayton.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And now I'm like in between, I'm in Hamilton. So I'm between Cincinnati and Dayton.
I grew up in Xenia.
Okay. My dad lives right outside of Xenia. Like,
that's awesome.
We have a joke of like, when I lived with him my freshman year of college, and I went to Wright State, and it was like, I can never get out of Xenia. Like everywhere is Xenia. And that just became a joke with my buddies and I, because it was like, oh, like, hey, Dave, like, we're going to hang out tonight. And he was like, I live in Xenia. And I'm like, God, we're always in Xenia.
If you have young kid or no young kids in that area, more than likely one of my brothers and sisters are teaching them.
Awesome.
Yeah, my little brother is a principal at Xenia High School.
Okay.
And I have 2 sisters that work at Beaver Creek.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, my dad was principal at Hillsboro. Which is why, like, he's in Wilmington, but then just had that short little jaunt over to Hillsboro. That's so it's such a small dude. Like, this is one of those just make the everything go crazy, because every time I have one of these moments where it's like, we're living states away, have no reason to be making any sort of connection, and yet I know exactly where your brother works. That's great. That's awesome.
My dad would take my brother and I to Cincinnati Reds games, and he loved 700 WLW.
Yep, I used to work there.
if he wasn't playing, oh really?
Yeah.
If he wasn't listening to, you know, like I said, doo-wop 50s stuff, he was listening to 700 LW. If I had a nickel for every time he yelled "pits off," I wouldn't have to work anymore. I have a lot of nickels.
Yeah. So my degree is in broadcasting, and when I got out, it was like I can't move because I became a dad in college, and so I was like, I'm not moving anywhere. So like I'll just keep trying to apply at Clear Channel for 700 or something, and I got the overnight gig on America's Trucking Network, and so I was working from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. and like 4 nights a week. And then during the day on paid programming on like 55 KRC and ESPN 1530. And it was just such a grueling schedule that after 8 months, I was like, I know I'm living the dream, but I can't do this for $7.15 an hour. Like I can't do this. Wow. I was still managing at Kmart at like, it was rough. It was a rough handful of years, but yeah, so I saw the Village People accidentally after a Reds game. The first concert that I remember paying money to go see was the venue doesn't even exist anymore. It was in Covington, and I went and saw the Iguanas and Cowboy Mouth because my cousin had told me about Cowboy Mouth, and I just thought like their music was super fun. The drummer Fred is from Louisiana, so he's got a very boisterous stage presence. He's the drummer and the lead vocalist. And so I was just like, I gotta see what this is like.
We call that Phil Collins where I'm from. I guess we're from
But that was the first, like I chose and spent money to go to, and I went with the same girl to both. So they were like, once I saw the Village People, I was like, I need to go see my like music that I want to be paying attention to, because I was similar. Like my mom always had music on at the house, and she was a child of the 60s, and so I had all of the oldies like just ingrained in who I am. If you put on a Righteous Brothers tape, I will sing every word of every song. I love like the Beach Boys were our wedding song, and like it just it's all ingrained in me. So what was your favorite, or what was your first concert?
So I can remember like it was yesterday. We would go as a family once a year to Kings Island.
Yeah.
And they had Timberwolf there in Kings Island. And it was me and my older brother, my younger sister, my other younger sister. And then I'll have two younger brothers and sisters that weren't born yet. Okay. So we get there, and my dad finds out that the Beach Boys are playing at Timberwolf.
Yeah.
So I can remember my mom and dad arguing about dad going to take me and my older brother to see the Beach Boys. And my mom's like, we didn't come here to watch the Beach Boys. We came here to ride the rides and have that. It's like, no, but the beach, it's only like $5 a ticket. It'll be fine. It'll be a couple hours. And then you and, you know, Shannon, my sister, can go have fun, and we'll meet you up with. I can remember standing there and my older brother kind of looking at each other going, I want to go see the Beach Boys. I want to go see the Beach Boys. Absolutely. So we got the very last, the stadium seating. Yep. We were the very last row in those wood bench stadium seating.
Yeah.
And we're standing up on the seats, and in front of us was a row of a sorority.
Oh gosh.
Of sorority girls, a whole row of. So I was maybe 5 or 6, so my brother was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So we were young, and we're dancing along to the Beach Boys, and these girls turn around and they're picking us up and bouncing. We're bouncing around, having a good time with this whole row of sororities. And I can just remember now as an old man now thinking about what my father would be thinking in that scenario. He's like, I'm just gonna watch the Beach Boys. I'm not looking at anything else. This is the Beach Boys. We're here to watch the Beach Boys. But knowing that his sons were having such a good time, I didn't know why I liked it, but I know I liked the scenario. Yeah. That was the first concert at Kings Island at Timberwolf, the Beach Boys. It was amazing.
I'm happy to tell you, Timberwolf has not changed at all. Yes. I worked at Kings Island for 9 years. in entertainment, and then was doing hospitality over at Timberwolf for like Spirit Song.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was called, but we all called it Republican Fest because like I saw Newt Gingrich speak when he was a presidential candidate at Timberwolf in Mason, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah, like
Wow.
it was just bizarre of like all of the random things that we had come through Kings Island that I got to do and experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly the same. It's still the same benches. They're not wood. They're painted like wood now. So they at least upgraded that, but everything else is exactly the same.
I haven't been to Kings Island, I'd say, in 20 years, but we go to Cedar Point every other year as a family. So we're get back there to that Sandusky area to be able to see Cedar Point. I'd love to be able to go to my brother and sisters who live right there in the area. Go to Kings Island all the time. Like, man, I wish we could just go one day to Kings Island, but it just never works out.
Yeah, and
I loved it.
It's gotten so expensive for just a single day ticket. Like it's crazy.
It's almost cheaper to get for Cedar Point to get the year passes, the season passes, than just to go one time.
Yeah.
So we get the season passes, and we don't stay at the Breakers. The Breakers is ridiculously priced. We stay at the Econo Lodge right down the road.
Yep.
And it's almost cheaper to do that 2 or 3 times than it is to stay at the Breaker for 3 days to do just the one time. So we've gotten, every time we go, we get season passes, and it's always a great time. It's always fun.
Yeah, I love theme parks. I will forever. If I was mascotting initially, like I was Scooby at Kings Island, and like if I could have done that year round, I never would have stopped. Like it was the best thing that could possibly have been. You mentioned the sorority. I worked at competitive cheerleading competition. And like at the time for like younger college age me, I was like, this is awesome because these are all like college competitive cheerleaders. But like now I'm like, no, that's no. But it was at Timberwolf as well. And
it's awesome.
Yeah, it was.
I remember when they flipped the Smurf ride to Scooby Doo. Yeah. It was the other way around. Smurf ride to Scooby Doo.
Yep. Yeah.
It was and at first I was mad. I was like, oh, I love that Smurf ride. And then they did it Scooby, and I was always a big Scooby-Doo fan. So when I went through that Scooby-Doo, I'm like, okay, this is all right. This is okay. This is a good switch. Good job, Kings Island.
Yep. Yeah. This isn't, I'm not saying that this is a tag of Scooby-Doo.
Nice.
I'm not saying that it is, but I'm not saying that it's not either. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
Dwayne, what's up, man? Thanks for chiming in and being a fan of left-handed is the correct-handed.
Correct-handed. It's right-handed and correct-handed.
That's right. I don't understand your problems because I'm a righty. So, all right. So we have hit already a bunch and having a good time. Tell me about your series, The Offspring, because when you sent the email, like, yeah, I've got this like maxi series, it's called The Offspring. I was like the band? And then quickly it was like, oh, not like the band at all. And like, you have this massive 50 issue plan for it. You're already on volume 7, which covers, I forget what issues you said, issue 29?
All the way to 29. Yeah.
Like that's so many comics.
I'm coloring issue 30 as we speak. Yep.
That's crazy. Like, how did all that start for you?
So when I was a kid, loved the superhero stuff. But I knew I wanted to do something a little bit different. I also loved like Archie and stuff like that, stuff where nobody was wearing capes or they were just wearing normal kids. Yeah. So as I was growing up as a teenager, I'd say maybe I was 16, 17 years old. I thought, well, how can I combine these two things together? So, and like we just talked about, big fan of Scooby-Doo, big fan of like the mysteries and the monsters and things like that. So I started thinking about just this group of young adults, 20 something, and they were older than me when I came up with the concept. So I'm like, oh, maybe I don't know enough about 21-year-olds, but it worked out because I didn't really start the series until I was probably in my 30s.
Perfect.
So it worked out. But I wanted a way to be able to not only tell a story with these 4 main characters where there was like serious problems that they had. I wanted these characters to have problems that I would see in my life with my friends and my family and my, things like that. I wanted them to have problems that could not be solved in 24 pages by punching the bad guy and just, pulling the mask off or whatever. Yeah. I wanted them to have this understanding that your problems are not always 100% solvable, but they are deal withable. You can still be a normal, whatever that means. You can still be a functioning member of society and do what you want to do with your life and still have those problems, that trauma be a part of you. So I came up with this concept of having these 4 characters who were in their early 20s that were abused, physically, mentally, emotionally abused as children. They meet at a alternative school, which is essentially an orphanage, an alternative school where they start to realize that they don't just share like a trauma of their past. They share this like mental link. They can kind of feel each other and know where know where each other are without ever having, knowing really where they are, but they can feel where each other are. They get separated from this alternative school as very young children. And then when we meet them in the first issue, they're in their 20s and they are not doing well. They are in the worst point in their life so far. One of the main characters, Sarah, is just getting out of prison. So not making great choices.
Yeah.
Will is the leader of the group. It's not really a superhero group. They're just friends that, are trying to solve this problem. But Will is kind of stuck at the alternative school. He doesn't make choices to be able to move his life forward. He's the smartest guy. He's a born leader, but he doesn't use any of his abilities in a way that would make sense for him to be able to be as successful as he could. Vince is so low, is so down. We meet him and he's attempting suicide.
Oh wow!
So some of these characters have big time problems.
Yeah.
That could not be solved in a 4-issue arc. So from there's a 4th character that we don't meet for another few issues. I wanted to have the 3 core characters come in and have them kind of deal with together these monsters as metaphors for their problems. There is the bad guy who is kidnapping children. There is the monsters who are trying to force them into slavery. There's a whole bunch of things going on that are all really metaphors for the problems that they're having in life. As the series goes on, these 3 main characters start to get really close and start to feel like they're family. They can trust each other and they start to feel like maybe they could get through stuff. Then I throw a wrench in the works and that 4th character comes in and she destroys all that trust because she doesn't trust them. She doesn't know them. So while she is also linked mentally to them, they kind of come together always by accident. She doesn't have that trust. She doesn't have that history with them to be able to know that these 3 other people are trustworthy. And she kind of throws a wrench and kind of has them, by her bad attitude about the whole situation, kind of pulls them apart a little bit. So as we move forward, they are, again, I'm using monsters and time travel as metaphor for the problems that we see in life. We're right in the middle of I'm right in the middle of my big time travel storyline where they keep getting pulled back further into time by the big bad called the Eternity Man. And he's being manipulated by the 4 godlike creatures called the In Us All, which are the physical embodiment of human emotion. So there's the wisdom in us all. There's the fight in us all. There's the child in us all. There's the malice in us all. And these godlike creatures are manipulating the big bad guy, the Eternity Man, pulling these children, these young adults back through time. And for a reason that we'll see as we move forward. He's growing what he calls a blood army to be able to take over not just his contemporary time that he lives in, but all of the time stream to be able to do what he wants with time. And there's a bunch of good little twists and turns that I have at the very end that I think people are really gonna like. It's not a normal story. It's super weird. But I like it that way. I really designed the characters and the story to kind of weave in and out of different genres, sci-fi, fantasy, time travel, that kind of stuff, through action, adventure, mystery. So to be able to weave these characters in and out of those genres was really part of the thesis statement for how I designed this 50 story arc.
That's awesome. That's a lot, man. Where do I start? See, with putting your characters through all of these really dark things, was that hard for you to write? Because I feel like if you're writing these same characters and coming up with the story for as long as you were like working on it and thinking about it, like, was that a downer for you to like think through all that stuff, or was it therapeutic to like think through it and then get it down on paper?
A little bit of both. It's one of those things where you stop and think like, is this too much? Is this too much? For me, for the reader, for you, whatever. And then I kind of realized that if I held back on that trauma, then the story wouldn't have the same kind of punch. Yeah. So everybody has, on some level, some form of trauma, some form of thing they look back on their childhood and go, I wish that didn't happen, for whatever it is. So I felt really early on when I started, I'd say, like I said, I was about like maybe in my mid-30s when I thought, now I can write and draw this book the way that I want to write and draw this book. I wasn't ready before. Yeah. But once I got in my 30s, like, I think I'm ready. If I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. I've got to do it. So when I started like thumbnailing out and plot pointing and getting everything ready to go, I had that thought, like, is this too much? Maybe is one of the main characters, we're meeting them when they're trying to commit suicide in the first issue. Is that too much? But it wasn't for him. I can't see it as the story that that I'm writing. It's the thing that's happening to these people. Yeah. That's really how I had to see it. It's not something I'm creating. It's something that just happened to these people. So and him not have that starting place of so low, it wouldn't make the highs even better. Yeah. It wouldn't make that opportunity when one of the main taglines for the first 25 issues was, "Where's your safe place?" And everybody knows, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling whatever, you think about, that place that makes you feel safe. These kids don't have a safe place. They didn't have a safe place. So about 25 issues into it, when they've gone through all this stuff together, all this trauma, all these monsters, all these people pulling them and pushing them and doing all this thing to them. And for one of the characters, Sarah, who was the most lost, the most dark, the most in herself, to look at the other two characters and say, when we were kids, they made us go through those counseling sessions, and I hated them. She didn't want to do them. She sat there and just kind of like made snarky comments and didn't want to be there. Yeah. But she said the psychologist would talk about a safe place. And I kept thinking, I don't have a safe place. There's nowhere safe in my world. And then she realizes with these two other characters that they are her safe place. The three of them together are their safe place. And when they come together with that realization that the three of them can do anything together, that's when the fourth character comes in and blows it all up. Of course. So, yeah, because that's life. You think you've got it, and then something happens. Yeah. You think you figured it out, and then you realize I haven't figured anything out. Because that's life.
Right. And like, as you said, everybody's got their trauma, their issues, their struggles, their challenges. Like, I feel like every person has to go through some sort of something to figure out like, oh, this is the thing that makes it worth it, or this is the place that I've gotten to, or like, that's the place I want to get to. I'm not there yet. And that's okay, because I'm not there anymore either. Like, it's all about that journey and the process. And as you were talking about it, like, I just felt the hair on my arm stand up. Like, that's such a profound thing to realize that like, it's with these people that have these similar dark past that suddenly like, you're my place, you're my people, this is my spot where I'm safe with you. Like, that's a really beautiful like picture to paint. And so like, as you're writing and doing all of the things on this book and on this series, like, does your creative process always follow the same steps, or like, do you do this full script and then thumbnails and then pencils and then inks, then colors, or like, are you sometimes drawing it and then be like, ooh, I got to change, I want to add this extra thing here? Like, what does that process for you look like?
Yeah, I keep my process pretty loosey-goosey. I'll write like plot points. This is where we're going. This is, if I have specific dialogue I would need a character to say, I'll write it down. But for the most part, it's boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, because this, because this, because this.
Yep.
And then as I start to, I thumbnail it out, and the thumbnail is really where I start to make those little changes, and there are times when I'm doing thumbnails and I wake up, in the middle of the night and go, idiot, that's what I should be doing here. So I'll scrap this page. Let's put this here,
Yeah.
and hopefully it makes it, better, more exciting or more poignant or more whatever it is. So once I get the thumbnails done, then I will just be full speed ahead with pencils and inks. And once the pencils and ink goes, I would say the pencil and ink is the part that takes the longest, just because I want to make, no panel is going to be perfect. Sure. Or no book is going to be completely perfect. So it took a little while. Everybody, how do you do this? How do you, I keep doing this, but I keep messing up. I'm like, don't worry about the move forward from the mess up. If you've got a panel, 4 on page 6 looks like trash, do the next page. Then do the next page, then do the next page, and then come back to that panel later on. To sit there and stop for one panel and think that this panel needs to be perfect for your vision to make sense or to be worth it, is the thing that I had to get over when I first started, knowing that this was going to be a huge process. Yeah. So just to keep moving forward. And, any creator looks at, issue 1 and go, oh, I could have done that a little better. I could have done this a little better. Well, that dialogue there's a little clunky, but that's part of the process. Yeah. So I don't, somebody asked me, would you ever go back to fix? And like, if I'm going backwards, I'm not moving forwards. So I can't, maybe when I'm done with 50 issues and the story is told, maybe I'll go back and clean up, or maybe I'll go back and change that here or there, but probably not, because then it wouldn't be what it was. And I like what it is. Yeah. So, and then once I get my inks done, I sometimes will let the coloring do a lot of the heavy lifting with some of the background details and things like that. Then lettering, then publish it, bada boom, bada bing, off to the next thing.
That's so wild. Like, you're so casual about that. And I'm just like, I don't even know how any of that works. Do you have like a favorite part of the process of like creating this story?
I would say
the writing part of it.
Yeah, when a panel comes out really good, that's a great feeling. When like all the panels are, this panel's serviceable, this panel looks pretty good, I really like that angle, I really like this, but you draw that one panel, you're like, that's the look that the character that's how the character should be looking at each other, that's how the character should be moving, that's how, and that feels really good. But I will say that when I'm plotting it out, and I just I've got a little notebook sitting right there, and I'll just be sitting while I'm watching a movie with my wife and just be writing out what I'm doing or what I want, the next, story arc to be. When I come up with that little little hook thing at the end to kind of, again, I want it to be super weird. Yeah. I want it to be not normal, because what does that even mean? So when I come up with that little thing, that little hook, that little turn of phrase that a character is doing, or reach a part in the story that I know is a turning point for a character, and Sarah, one of my main characters, when she said that was a turning point for her, because she didn't have any reason to trust anybody. Everybody in her life had let her down. So to trust these 2 other peers was a big deal to her. When one of the other characters lets go of his trauma for a second to not make jokes. Like, all the characters, they all deal with that trauma differently. Sarah fights, Sarah just punches things. Will hides because he's hiding in this alternative school where he can't really get out into the world. He doesn't want to get out in the world. Vince, hides everything behind humor. He, if he can't make a joke about it, then he's running, then he's not doing his job, he feels. Yeah. So he hides his traumas, feelings, making inappropriate jokes. And the one character that comes in later, Megan, she runs. That's why she's not there, because she ran. She said, I'm not dealing with any of this. I'm going to run. Yeah. So to be able to have those 4 characters that all react differently to these traumas, and how those different reactions clash with what they're dealing with, the the monster or the bad guy or the whatever it is that they're dealing with, has really been a fun part. Also, giving them all four a very unique voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like unique voices, it's difficult to tackle one main character in a story. Like, how do you keep track? Like, how do you keep organized to
It can
keep
be
Sarah and Vince? Like, how do you do that?
it can be hard because at one point you want to, there are times, or at least when I was writing, that I wanted every character to be funny, but not every character's funny. I tried very hard to not have Sarah make jokes, because Sarah doesn't make jokes. Vince makes jokes. So she can be sarcastic. She can say a funny thing in context of the situation, but she's not going to be making jokes. Same thing with Will. Will isn't funny, but Will's clever. So he can be clever, but not laugh out loud funny. So it really was trying to make sure that each character was reacting in a way that they would. And one way I did that was to kind of remember who these characters are based off of. So there are aspects, there's combinations of people in there, but they're all, for the most part, really based off of people that I knew growing up, and I won't name names, but they were named, or they were based off of these people. So I tried to think, how would this person react in that situation? Okay. What's the funny thing that this kid would say to try to downplay the seriousness, or to make it as awkward as he possibly could, because he didn't like the awkwardness to begin with. So if he's not in charge of the awkwardness, then he doesn't like it. So if it's going to be awkward, he's in charge of the awkwardness. So it really was trying to remember who the characters were based off of and how they would react in those situations. So it is a bit of a juggling act. And there is bits of dialogue that sometimes I had to like switch around to be able to say, oh, I really like this joke, but Will can't make it. Vince has got to make this joke. So how do I switch it to be able to make sure that the right characters are using the right tone?
Yeah. And then like, how, as you've been creating all of this, do you have like a set or written down or penciled like schedule of when you want to hit certain like whatever they're called, like markers, or like, do you have something like that to keep yourself on like an ongoing, just keep working, keep hitting, keep doing, keep progressing?
I do. And I know at this point, like I said, I've had these characters for 30 years. So I know where I want the story to go. And I know those character beats that I want to be able to make. And sometimes it's really small things that I try to put in to be able to, for me at least, maybe the reader doesn't quite catch the small little detail or small little thing, but I know it's there. And if somebody rereads it later on, oh, I didn't catch that the last time that this character did that thing that 5 issues ago they said they would never do. So it's that, I think, that growth of the character through small little beats, and then the bigger beats, the bigger of, okay, now we're all in this together, or whatever the big character beat is for that group. And I try to make sure that inside of the bigger overall story, there's small little stories that each character can have a chance to shine. If you notice, the first 4 issues is kind of just introducing people to the world and what these characters can do, what these people can do, and what their main goal is with the first big bad, and then from there it's 2-issue story arcs for the 3 main characters, and from there we jump into another big storyline, and then 2-issue story arcs for the 3 main characters, and then the Megan who was left out of this gets a whole 3-issue story arc all by herself. So I was a little concerned about not having Will, Vince, and Sarah, the 3 main characters, in this whole big story arc. But I thought that the story that I had for Megan, the 4th missing character, was good enough, was solid enough to be able to. And Vincent, and it makes sense too why they're absent until the last 4 pages of the story arc. So it just, to me, it was like, I'm not just going to try to shoehorn them in. I'm going to have it make sense to how normal life would be. They're not there. And they won't be there until this one part. So to let Megan tell Megan's story. Let her be the star of the show because she hasn't been there yet.
Cool.
Let people get to know her.
Yeah. Do you have any more characters like Megan planned for the remaining 21 issues?
No, once I hit the halfway point, I knew that these were the four to tell the story. And there's four for a reason. It started off as, like I allude to when I talk about what the meaning of the name The Offspring means, why it's called that, and who the Offspring are, not necessarily the four main characters. But there's couple little hints in there about why these four characters specifically. So, and little hints about why the godlike creatures, the us all, are manipulating, these four characters, throwing them back in time, putting them in these situations, giving them monsters to fight, why they're doing these things. And it'll start to kind of be like clearer as we go. I think in Omnibus #1, my first season, issues 1 through 13, I asked a lot of questions as we went up and then answered those questions in issue 13, but then asked more questions so that it kind of went right into the next season, all the way up to issues 25 for the next season. And again, answered those questions and then asked a whole bunch of other questions and then jumped into the next one. So I really am surprised, happy, whatever, to say that I'm again very proud of the way it's turning out. I never expect perfect, but it's pretty darn close to what I envisioned as a kid. So it's great.
That's such a win. Like, have you ever considered, if you're doing like a spin-off or something, have you ever considered bringing in another collaborative partner to like work with you on it? Or are you like, nope, it's my vision. I know how to get there. I know how to execute it. Like, it's me and it's my show and it's my circus and these are my monkeys. And like,
I have had the opportunity. I've been really lucky that there's been a couple people, and one I'll point out specifically, that have come in and helped me for a couple issues here and there. There was a guy who called me up, and we just met through Facebook or for social media, Chris McCauley, who he's Scottish, but I believe he lives in upstate New York, around the area here, but not close enough to me where I am. And he is a writer and an artist and a creator, and he's actually does work with Bram Stoker's family, his son Dracula of Dracula fame. And they put out comic books, they put out novels, they put out I believe they're working on a movie for first Dracula.
That's awesome.
So he's doing some pretty big time stuff. He called me. This had to be, let's see, so this was issues 20, 21, and 22, if I'm remembering the timeline. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. What do you need? What can I do to help you?" is what he was saying to me. And I said, "Oh boy, what would be amazing? I'm falling a little bit behind for whatever reason here. If you do color," and he goes, "Yeah, I color." And I said, "Would you mind coloring this 3-issue story arc so that I could kind of get caught up on some of the other things?" And it worked out perfectly because it was the first initial time travel story where they traveled back into the American Civil War. Okay. So the color change worked because it was a completely different place that they were in.
Yeah.
So it really worked out. If it would have been anywhere else, I would have been like, no, I'm okay, because I want to make sure that there's consistency through.
Yeah.
But because it was the first time travel story, and he busted out those 3 issues, and I think they look great, really dark, and really that's part of the start of why these characters are jumping back into time. And I think that it worked out really well. But I've been super lucky to be able to have a couple creators like that who contact me, or that I've worked with on some of my graphic novels that I have that aren't The Offspring, to be able to work with them in my one-shots. A couple people helped with one-shots. I've been really lucky to be able to have a small group of people that I could reach out to be able to, push me to the next level.
Yeah, and talk about that for a minute too. Like, it's not just The Offspring that you're putting out. Like, you wrote a full-length novel. You've got several other graphic novels, one-shots, like you mentioned. Like, how do you timeline-wise make all that make sense? Like, is it just like an internal thing for you? Like, oh, I want to put out X number of issues of The Offspring, and I have this other story that's been cooking that I need to get out. And so like that's my this year's focus. Or like, is that how that works for you? Or are you just like, as it comes to you, you just start the new thing, continue doing The Offspring, but then do the new thing? Like, how does that all work for you?
The way you just said it was a trap. Don't fall into that trap.
Okay.
When I finished season 2 of The Offspring, I had a book, a 100-plus page graphic novel called Latent Lightspeed that I had in my brain for, it had to be 2 years back then, but I knew I couldn't do both. So I plotted it out and set it to the side. So I had the whole plot, knew exactly where I was going, knew exactly what I wanted to do, and but then focused on The Offspring. So once I got season 2 of The Offspring done, I said, I think 23 issues is a good place to be able to stop, try to get people to jump on board 23 issues, try to, get more fans into, so share it a lot, take it to conventions, do all those things.
Yeah.
But also use this time, take a year, and I was hoping it'd take me about 7 months. It took me about 8 months. 7 months to be able to put this second graphic novel together, Latent Lightspeed. And as I was doing that, still, The Offspring was always still there, still plotting out, still thumbnailing, still doing all those things, but knowing that the focus was this next 100-page graphic novel. So I got that out probably about November of last year, November of last year, give or take. And then once it came out, then that freed me up. I felt now it's The Offspring. Come hell or high water, 50 issues. So more than halfway there. And now at 30, there's nothing that's going to get in the way now. I have other ideas. I have other stories, but The Offspring is going to be the main, and I hope to get 5 issues out every single year. The reason that I did the one-shots, especially at the beginning, is because even 50 issues can be daunting sometimes for people who like indie comics. That's a lot of books. Sometimes you'll have companies who make one and they say it's a 4-issue miniseries, and then you never see issues 2, 3, and 4. Or they say, yeah, we're working on this graphic novel. Here's some preview pages, and you really like it, but then it never comes out, or whatever it is. So being a one-man band, I wanted to be able to give fans, readers, I wanted to give them kind of like a bridge to be able to see the way I draw, see, the way I tell stories. And hopefully if they pick up one of the one-shots, like Will Aliens Do My Homework or Sock Hop Killer, they'll pick up those 24-page one-shots, and they're like 99 cents on Global Comics. Go to Global Comics and look me up. They're right there for super cheap for digital. Then that would be like a bridge to be able to say, okay, I like what this guy is doing. Let's see what he does with a longer form. Let's see what he does with more time to tell the story. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah.
So it really is just about the one-shots are because my brain won't stop, and I like every kind of genre there is. So I just had to get them out.
Yeah.
But with, I believe, 6 one-shots, I've got enough there now that I'm happy with the one-shots. 2 100-plus page graphic novels, the Loved Ones and Late Lightspeed. I've got graphic novels. I'm good. Now I need to focus on this. And I say that as a joke in my brain because I'm actually very much more than halfway through my second novel right now. So I'll have my computer in front of me and go, I've got 20 minutes. And I wouldn't be able to do that, though, if I didn't know where I was going. Like if I'm like, I have an idea, but I don't know, I don't know the third act.
Yeah.
Then you're going to stop I'd stop halfway through and go, I don't have a third act. So all that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I really need to nail this third act down.
Yeah.
So I better stop doing everything until I get that done. And then I'm just not feeling it. So
might as well go watch an Antique Roadshow.
Right. I'll go learn about some pot from old England 1776 era. Sure.
But if I've got the third act, if I've got the genre, I've got the tone, I've got the third, I know where I want to go. I know the beginning, the middle, and the end. It doesn't really take me much to type it out. I'm very happy the way the second novel's coming out. It won't come out for a while because, first drafts, and have a couple people look at it to edit it and make little changes here and there. But I don't feel I've lost the plot anywhere. I feel that I'm giving this character, that hero's journey, of highs and then super downs, and then, be able to pick back up again. But I will say that I am a big fan of tragedies.
Yeah.
And if anybody read my first novel, maybe it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. If you read The Offspring, maybe it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
maybe it's not all sunshines and rainbows and sunshine. But that's also life. It doesn't always go well.
Yeah.
So I'm not against putting my characters through the ringer.
That's great. I think it takes a certain level of the only way that I can think of it, and it might not be the right application, but like it takes a certain level of maturity as an author to be comfortable writing characters that go through the really muckety muck, just gross, bad things, to then be able to take them all the way out of it, or like maybe that's the hand that they were dealt, and so like they just have one thing after another, and like there are people that are like that, where every time they turn around, they're like, oh, I just got past that. Cool. Bam, into a brick wall. And like, it's just always something. And I have certain people that just jumped into my brain that like, they just can't catch a break.
Yeah.
And so that is life. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And sometimes it's disheartening as a reader to read a book that's painting that picture of like, look at these magical unicorns and everything's wonderful. And I'm like, no, it isn't. What? I'm going to put this book down, because I'm not even, I read that and I'm not like, oh, I'm enjoying this because good for them. I'm like begrudging them because I'm like, that's not what that is.
And I think that when I started the second novel, which I don't quite have a name yet for, I've got some ideas, but it hasn't quite hit me hard enough to be able to say that's the name of it. But I think that, like I said, as turning 50 this year and always having those thoughts in the back of your brain, or those that life sucks kind of thing. Oh my gosh, I did this thing and now this thing's happening. Oh my gosh. It really was kind of taking that turn in your life. And I just switched jobs this year. I'm a teacher, so I moved from school districts, and there was big time problems at one, and I'm moving to this one hoping that it's going to be great, but there's going to be problems everywhere you go. So not to say that it'd be big time problems, but there's always little things that fall through the cracks. And I think that that maturity, which people have used a lot of words to describe me, mature is not one of them, but I'll take it. But I will say that at this point, there is always in the back of my brain that no matter what happens, everything's gonna be fine. Relax. It's gonna be fine. I've spent my time getting mad, and beating my fists and hating this person and yelling about this and doing all that stuff, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. So it's being able to know that everything's fine. Sometimes it's really fine. Sometimes it's really not fine. But in all of it, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. Everything's gonna be fine. And I kind of come back to a joke that I made. This was 20 years ago to a friend of ours. I can't remember exactly how the relation, but she was very scared about something. And she's like, oh, I don't want to do this because this I'm really worried. Like lots of some anxiety and lots of intenseness, which people can feel. And I am completely empathetic to that situation. But she's like, oh, I can't. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And we were like, fine, if that stuff happens, just I can't deal with it. I can't. What if that happens? And I'm like, look, whatever happens, you're not going to die. And she goes, well, what if I do die? And my answer was, then you won't have to worry about it anymore. So what are you wasting your time worrying about it for? If you don't die, it worked out well, no matter how it ends.
Right.
Or no, if you do die, you won't have to worry about it anymore. Blackness. You'll be done. You'll be done. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, and that really is like trying to find the happiness, trying to find the joy in all the things, but also knowing, be ready, because at any second, something could happen, but not let it get in the way.
Yeah.
And that's how I treat these characters also.
That's great. It's great that you can translate that into characters that have trauma that like is out there for every reader to see and experience. Because a lot of people that you meet day to day, especially as a teacher, like I'm sure a lot of the students that you've got have a ton of stuff going on. Like I think of 2 teachers that I used to confide in and like just dump all of my mess on, and they were with me through that for the however many years I had them and whatever. But like with your characters, it's everybody that's reading this book is seeing all of this trauma. And so then it's like, oh man, they're still like trying to be positive and find their safe space and do the things that are positive and all. Like, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But I feel like the more that you practice it and the more that you sharpen that tool of looking for the positives, the easier it becomes to like, oh man, I just broke my leg, but now I don't have to worry about hitting my step count every day because I can't. And like, that sounds really like trivial or whatever, but like that it's a choice that you have to make. And once I figured out that like, oh, I can just focus on whatever, like finding whatever, I'm an eternal optimist, like to a fault. And I always see the best in people to a fault. And like regularly with people at work and stuff, it's just like everybody else is just berating this one person for being a terrible whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but they're really nice when we have our huddles. Like they're really nice to everybody. I understand they're like a complete piece of garbage, but they're really nice. They're a nice piece of garbage.
There's always something. If you can't find one positive thing to say, then I think that's like if I couldn't find one positive thing to say about everybody and everything in my life, then that's a me problem.
Right.
Then that's a me problem that I need to fix, because everybody's got pros and cons.
Yeah.
Everybody has positive and negative. There's always light in the darkness.
Yeah.
So
it's like Patrick's saying, like, don't sweat the small stuff. It's realizing that it's all small stuff.
That's
like
it.
It is. And it's crazy how long it took me fighting against that. Like, no, I have righteous anger. I'm allowed to be. And then like, once you finally get to a point of like finding that peace and realizing like, oh, what the hell was I angry for? Like, what was I doing? I wasted so much time being just angry at everything. And now I'm like just the eternal optimist and all of those things. And it's a choice that you have to make. So,
and shout out to Patrick. Patrick's a friend. Hi, Patrick. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks for tuning in and sounding off in the comments. Like that's
Patrick is one of those people that I've been lucky enough to be able to utilize in my journey. He's a great guy. And I appreciate all his help that he has done with me in the past.
That's cool. So, okay, talk to me a little bit about like how did you know when you started writing The Offspring and doing all the one shots? Like, how did you figure out setting up Correct Handed Comics and like distributing all of these books? Like, how did you figure out how to do all that stuff?
Yeah, that's still always a long, an ongoing process of the best way to be able to get the book out to people in my small confined area of the world. So when I first realized that I was ready to be able to start drawing sequential pages in a way that I thought looked good to be able to tell the story, I reached out to a couple small press companies. I'm not going to start drawing Batman right away, so I went out to these small press companies and kind of sharpened my teeth on these smaller companies, and about, I'd say maybe a year into that, I'd say in that year I did maybe 4 or 5 separate books, one issue, one-offs for these companies. About a year into it, I said, why am I doing their stuff when I could be doing my stuff? I've got the stories. I'm able to do this. And now that I know that I can put out this number of books in a year, I'm going to focus on that. So coming up with the name and the company, it was a joke. Correct Handed Comics was a joke that I would make as a waiter in Beaver Creek area, Burbank's barbecue in Beaver Creek, and they used to have one in Cincinnati also. I worked for Burbank's for many years.
Okay.
It was a great time. We had too much fun. And people would always notice that I was writing at least 2 or 3 times a shift, somebody would go, oh, he's a lefty. Oh, he's a lefty. Oh, watch out, he's a lefty. Watch out, he's a lefty. And I just started saying, well, no, it's not right and left-handed. It's right and correct-handed. And, they'd get a little giggle or they go, oh, correct-hander. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Some people, I remember one guy getting like really frustrated with me that I kept saying correct-handed instead of like, what are you getting frustrated for, guy? Relax. It's okay. So when I started putting together, company logos and like the identity of what I wanted to create as a comic book creator, I had a couple other ideas for names here and there. And then I made that joke to somebody, correct-handed. And I'm like, correct-handed comics. That's it. That's I'm done thinking about it. So I went home and made this blue symbol. And from there, it really was a learning experience about publishing, whether it's digital with comics, Global Comics, right? And there's been a couple other places here and there, like going on to Amazon, which is where I do most of my business from. Okay. To do print and digital. The first book that I put on Amazon, I would say it took me probably 4 days to get it into the publishing thing. They have the whole set up, and they would send it back. Nope, it's not this. It's got to be this or this. It's got to be this. Your pages aren't da 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 da. And it probably took me 4 full days to really get it to where they needed to go. And I'd say now it takes me 20 minutes. So it really is just that learning process of making mistakes and knowing, oh, geez, this is the work. But just keep digging your heels and I'm not going to let you tell me I can't do this, you jerk, like digging your heels in to make sure that you've got everything where it needs to go. And I would bet that at least 60% of it was my own user error, not quite understanding what they were asking for, not quite understanding, the process of putting together the gutters, putting together the bleeds, making sure that everything was where it was. It was very much a learning process of trying to understand where it all needed to go. Yeah. So really, it is just about finding as many different places as you possibly can to be able to show your stuff, and being willing on some level. For me, and other people might disagree with this, but for me to be able to know when to give it away. So you're giving it away now in the hopes that people will come back to be able to see more. So there's been times where I've just kind of randomly sent stuff to people, and then I'll notice a little tick up on Amazon. Okay, that works. And being also, willing to go to conventions and be able to sell books. And I usually sell a good amount of books at conventions. And hopefully, before COVID hit, this was 4 years ago now, right? Before COVID hit, I was ready to hit. I was hitting 1 convention a year and ready to hit 4 conventions a year, and then it stopped. And now I'm still doing 1 convention a year, but ready to do 3 or 4 more as we go. So it is just about getting out there, knowing now that my kids are older, my wife is kind of done talking to me. She'll talk to me from time to time. That's fine. She's happy with our very limited contact we have. I joke, but she's very willing to. She knows that this is a passion that makes me happy. So there's 3 things that make me happy: my wife, my kids, and drawing comic books. So she knows. I'm very lucky to have a family that, when I'm drawing or creating, they just let me do it. And then I come out of my den and I say, what are we doing? Are we playing cards? Are we going to Cedar Point? What are we doing? And we'll do it. So it really is just that process of continuing to grind on social media, continuing to make those books. If putting together a 4-issue miniseries sounds too daunting, do just a 24-page one-shot. Do 2 or 3 one-shots that aren't a full, 4 issues of a story. And then put them together as an anthology trade. It's one of those things. The first one you do, if you're anything like me, the first one you do and get out, you'll be hooked. It'll be like a drug. You'll need it. You'll need to do it. And that's kind of how I feel. I need to get this out. I need the story to be finished. Like I said, the joke I make is if somebody were to chop on my hands, I'd learn to draw with my feet. So it's going to happen, whether they like it or not, whoever they are.
I love that it's just like vibrating in you that much, because talking to a couple things to take away from that. One, like talking to people that aren't creatives, that are just like their brain works differently. At like trying to explain to them, like, yeah, I have pulled over on a highway before because I had this idea and I had to write it down and I had to capture it before I lost it. And they're like, why didn't you have somewhere to be? I'm like, I did. Yeah. And it made me late, but like, I had to get the story down. Like I had to get this thing down because I knew if I didn't, I was going to lose it. And I really liked whatever I came up with as I was driving, or I've been running. I used to run a lot and I have fallen out of that completely. And I need to get back on that treadmill again, begrudgingly, but I used to be running and I would stop running and forget about like, oh, I don't care about my pace anymore, because I just had this idea that I just need to capture. And like, so I totally get the need to like, I just need, and I don't have anything out. I don't have anything out. I'm just like, I just have these ideas, and once I have them, I gotta write them down because I want to be able to expand them and write more and get things and eventually make comics and do the stuff. But like, I got to start first with ideas that are actually going to interest other people and entice other people.
No, you don't.
I was going to say, if they don't, like,
don't worry about other people. Don't worry about other people. You write the thing, you do the thing you want to do. Don't worry about other people. Who cares about other people? there will be people that like your thing. Do not worry. Like one thing I tell myself is, there are, like, if somebody says, oh, it's not for me, fine, no problem. And then I'll have a couple other people, like a couple people conventions, come up to me and go, that first volume 1 was one of the best things I've ever read. I'm like, awesome, here's volume 2, give it a shot. So if you like that too. So I try when I hear those people who didn't like it, I always remind myself, there are a lot of people out there that like Star Wars. But there are also a lot of people out there that hate Star Wars. Everybody's got an opinion. It's okay. I'm creating my thing because I like it. So I don't worry about other people. The people who need to see it will see it eventually. And there's that one, you were talking about having a whole bunch of different ideas and just writing them down. That one that you have is going to be the one that makes you, that forces you to finish it, to do that thing. This is such a good idea, and I know from beginning to middle to end what it is. I've got to do it now. I've got to do it, and you'll do it. I think I needed to hear that too. Thank you. Well, what's funny too is the star. Are we still okay on time, Chris? Are we?
Yeah, no, we're totally good. Yeah.
So you were talking about running. One of my one shots, a Sock Hop Killer, is like my 80s, homage to 80s slasher flicks.
Yeah.
And I was jogging through the woods. This was probably 3 years ago. And I stopped at the little place where they have all the little things and you can do sit-ups and push-ups or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm doing whatever I'm doing that I don't do as much as I should anymore. And you kind of get that feeling on the back of your neck, that you're, and I'm looking around waiting to see like somebody in the bushes, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, so I need to write this. I need to, it's been done a million times. So I'm like, okay, so slasher flick, like Freddy or Jason or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm like, how can I do something that is completely different from that? And my first thought was, and so, people who are horror are gonna yell at me for this a little bit, but my first thought is female slasher. And I know Friday the 13th, no spoilers for anybody, but I understand Friday the 13th. No, if you're a big fan of that, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But then I thought, what kind of visuals would I need? What kind of visuals would make this person, trench coat, or maybe she's like in a gown, like Cinderella gown or whatever. And I'm just going through all these processes. I'm like, wait a minute, 50s sock hop, 50s poodle skirts.
Yeah.
Like Laverne and Shirley poodle skirts, sock hop, 1950s. Yep. And a mask that like is like the makeup smeared and the lipstick on there, and she's got the little pouffant thingy going on, and the
like victory roll thing.
Yeah. And I by the time I was done with my jog, I had the look and I had the basic idea of the story. And I was lucky enough to know a buddy who's like a huge horror guy, Paul Dulsky, who used to do the Everything Horror podcast, and I called him up. I'm like, I'm having a little trouble with the arc. I'm having a little trouble with the hook or the whatever. And we talked for about 3 minutes, and I'm like, you got it. You got it, man. Thank you. And he's a co-writer on the book, because he got me. He said those 2 or 3 things to me that would get the story to where I needed it to go.
That's awesome.
And the great thing about it is, for all those one shots, there's always more there. So if something takes off, I've got enough story to be able to do a 2 or 3 or 4 with any of those one shots.
Yeah. Dude, and like, as I was perusing your website, which for anybody that needs to hear it is correcthandedcomics.com. As I was going through the comics that you've got on there, I was just like, God, you've got so many different even just the little thumbnails that you've got, as I cheat and look at all of them. Like, they all feel very different. Like, I know you try not to prescribe to the trap, right? Of like, I want to write a story of every genre or whatever. Yeah. But like, did it just naturally come about that you happen to be writing different genre? Like, does it even feel like you're writing different genres as you've been creating comics? Yeah.
I try to remember that it's always action adventure, thriller, and I'll throw the word thriller in there too, because it's always that, the umbrella of that. So from there, as long as I don't just do things like the time travel stuff, I didn't just do it because I wanted to draw time travel, because I wanted to make my life harder to have to draw like Roman gladiators and or the Civil War, soldiers from the American Civil War. I didn't just do it just to drive myself crazy, doing all that research to be able to get those stuff. I always try to make sure that if I'm jumping genres a little bit in The Offspring, that it makes sense to the overall story. So once I found a reason and a way to be able to do it that made sense to my overall 50 issue story arcs, then I was all in. For it. So it can be monsters and bad guys and kidnapping, and it can be those really dark, like film noir type things. Yeah. But it can also be Quantum Leap. Yeah. You know what I mean? It can also be that, because the overall theme of we're fighting through this trauma, fighting through these things that are happening to you. The overall theme is, we're all time travelers. We're just having to always be going forward. In our brains, we go backwards. So what happens if these characters go backwards in time and are reliving these lives that they were reincarnated through over and over and over and over again to where we are now? How is that going to affect their view of the problems that they had when we met them to begin with? So once I found that kind of link for them of why time travel, it made perfect sense to the story to be able to have them time travel. So as long as, and you're a creator also, so that there's always a way that we can always find a way to link it. So if I wanted to have them riding dinosaurs, I could find a way to have them riding dinosaurs, that made sense to the story. But I also try to keep it grounded in some kind of reality. They may be in 15th century France. They may, be in, the American Civil War. They may be on the RMS Lusitania in World War I. But it's going to be grounded in the reality that they live in. So with some fantastical, things in there as we throw them in.
Yeah, you mentioned Quantum Leap. My favorite episode of that show is when he goes through the whole episode trying to do all these good things and save history and do this stuff, and he's not leaping, and he keeps looking back at Al, and I was like, I don't know what it is. Like, Ziggy's got nothing. Like, I'm sorry. And he finally is like walking frustratedly through this farm, and he hears a kid playing his guitar, singing Piggy Sue, and he's like, Al, don't say it. And he was like, what are you gonna do? And he was like, hey, try Peggy. And he was like,
Suey, try Peggy Sue.
That's great, Mr. Thanks, and starts singing Peggy Sue, and then he leaps, and I'm like, man, I love Buddy Holly.
And it's so funny too. They set that up so well, because he doesn't know his name. He's like, hey, pal, hey, guy, hey, kid, through the whole thing, and then he finally hears it, and he walks over and goes, buddy, And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, why don't you try Peggy Sue? Huh? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the best in quantum. Those are
It's
the
so
best
good.
kind of moments in Quantum Leap. It is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. So to have that as like an influence for me is big time, because I love those characters and I love the way that they use time, and to be able to have this anthology series like The Fugitive or The Incredible Hulk or whatever it is, to be able to tell these different stories, but through the mirror of science fiction. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I always watched it because my mom loved it, because Scott Bakula is just her like heartthrob
I
forever.
get it. He can turn me.
And I'm like, you know
He
what?
can turn me.
He's a handsome guy. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you, Mom.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Circumstances.
Right. Right. So, David, that's officially the end of my notes, but that's not the end of this. I have 3 more things for you to do. The first is, you're all over social media and you're all over creating all of these stories and creating all of these comics. I've got all of your socials that you gave me in the description. Do you have like a favorite platform that you want people specifically to try and connect and find you on?
If you look up Correct-Handed Comics, that blue hand will pop up on most of social media. I would love people to go to TikTok and look up Correct-Handed Comics. I have a lot of fun videos on there, a lot of stuff that shows a lot of previews for The Offspring, a lot of stuff about me talking about the ins and outs of creating, that kind of thing.
Cool.
And being able, and just talking about like my journey of creating these characters. So TikTok would be amazing. I do a lot of stuff on most social media, Facebook and Instagram and X and Bluesky, and I'm missing one in there. I guess not. I guess I'm all there. But yeah, and then all of it through correcthandedcomics.com.
Cool.
And there are links to everything I've ever created on there.
Great. I'll make sure, I can't remember if it's on there or not, but I'll make sure that the website is on there so that folks can go there and then use right on the home tab, the purchase now buttons for all of the things for The Offspring, so that it's super easy for people to get a hold of this book, because I just think the whole idea and everything that you've crafted so far and have planned just sounds so wildly fun.
Thanks.
So yeah, I just think it's great. And do you have a favorite Offspring song, like the band?
Offspring is one of my favorite bands of all time. Gosh, I'd have to say,
or album, if that's easier.
Self-Esteem, Pretty Fly for a White Guy. I'd say that Gone Away is probably my favorite Offspring song.
Okay.
So I believe it's on Ixnay on the Ombre.
Yep.
Gone Away is probably my favorite Offspring song.
That's solid. I love that that's an unusual choice, because a lot of people are like, oh, Pretty Fly for a White, and I'm like, they have so many better songs. It's good.
Gone Away is an amazing song.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. The second thing is, I'm going to take a screenshot to use as the YouTube thumbnail. Also, thanks, Patrick, for stopping by. Have a good evening, sir.
Thanks,
because you were so nice to sound off, I wanted to make sure that we, and he had a really great point. Like, your energy is just contagious. I'm like, man, I got to keep up with you. Like, and that's not usual that I have to keep up with somebody else. So I appreciate you bringing your energy onto the show. For YouTube,
it's nice to not get in trouble for having my whole life was calm down.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, take a seat, sit down, take a deep breath. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do the whole show standing up because it's my show, Mom. I am going to take a screenshot, and that's basically so that we can pose and it makes my life easier. And I'm going to get my.
That's right. I'm going to get my good side. I don't know if I have a good side, but
I'm just going to make sure that I'm mirroring your.
Oh,
see,
nice.
if I use my left hand, it looks like it's my right hand though. So that's all right. We're going to do that. And then we'll go 3, 2, 1. Cool. The last thing, and not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. I love doing this show, not because of the numbers, because I genuinely, like, with this show, it's easy for me. Like, I don't care about how many people tune in. I don't care about the numbers. I didn't start it for that. I started it to talk to indie comics people about indie comics and music. And everybody has a different way, reason, methodology, creative way that their brain works. But yet we all still have the similarity of we love comic books and we want to see more comics created and we want to create more comics and tell more stories. That said, I know that everybody has their own thing that they want their people to hear. So I like at the end of my episodes to just turn the floor over to you. So if there's anything you want anybody that's watching this, listening this, streaming this, doing whatever with this to hear directly from you, it could be about The Offspring. It could be about the band The Offspring. The content doesn't matter so much as I just want you to have a chance to say anything it is that you want people to hear directly from you. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. And I would say, as a lifelong learner and someone who has used the arts to make his life better, the one thing I would say to people who are creators or not creators is that to never underestimate the power of the arts. Never take the arts for granted. They are not frivolous things. It is not just drawing pretty pictures. The arts is seeing and understanding your world better. So if anybody tells you stop wasting your time with those doodles, tell them to take the train, because you're not wasting your time. You're communicating in a way that makes sense to you. So for whether you're a teacher or a parent of a student who has all that energy and can't get it out except for drawing or, drawing on the walls or whatever it is, give them outlets for that energy, because the arts can take them to places that even within themselves, that could give them opportunities to be able to be a better person. So the arts are not just about drawing pretty pictures. It's about seeing and understanding your world better. And if you have any feelings or inkling of drawing or writing, do it, because it's a feeling that after you're done creating that thing, you'll always want to have.
Great. Dude, I love that. I love any way that it organically comes up of like, just do the thing, tell your story, make your art. Someone commented on a previous episode that I just saw today, like, man, I'm really tempted to like pick up a pencil again. I'm like, yeah, do it. Yes. Yeah, do it. Like, I don't know if you're waiting for me to, Blob 86 or 88 or whatever your user handle was, do the art, like make the thing that you want to make. Because it's so important to do.
And it's something that people who've never done it before, once they do it, they start to realize the power of it. They start to realize the empowerment of yourself, but also the way that you're communicating with other people around you. Yeah. It's been a lifelong journey, lifelong struggle for me to get to understand, for me to get people to understand the importance of the arts, especially in little minds learning. So we somehow lose that as we become, teenagers and into adulthood. Oh, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. Oh, I can't even draw a stick figure. Yeah, you can. You've just stopped. You just decided you can't do those things. So you're not doing it. But I can teach somebody how to draw a million things in less than an hour. It's just a matter of doing it and seeing the world through the eyes of an artist.
That's great. I can't say anything better than that, so I'm not even going to try. Hang tight after this. I had some logistics for you. David, thank you so much for hanging out and just sharing your brain and your energy and your love for this medium. Because I love, like, it's just contagious, and like I want more people to hear it and get contagious. I don't catch the energy.
I'll infect them. We'll infect them.
That's it. Yeah, we're coming for you, uninfected.
Infect them with the arts.
I don't know if we're gonna get blacklisted now for saying whatever. It's fine. I don't care. I had a good time talking with you, David. I appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your Monday. Thanks to everybody that sounded off in the comments and for hanging out with us. If you're watching this after live or listening to it after whenever you're listening to it, I hope you have a good whatever it is for you. And what's a good podcast without a good tagline? This is mine. Go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics. We are out of here. And then I hit the button, which I wasn't ready for. There we go. Yeah. And then we